Question 1. Outline what is the difference between risk profiling and risk assessment? Answer. Risk profiling, the process used, at a strategic level, to recognize the range of risks that threaten an organization along with the likelihood and probability impacts of those risks. Risk studies are done at as macro, the whole organization, level and how these risks could jeopardize the business activities. Risk assessment, the formal process of identifying the hazards and controlling the risks posed by the hazards at micro, individual, level activities. This process focuses the hazardous activities case by case and reduces the risks to acceptable level to make the workplace safe. Question 2. Outline the risk profiling process. What steps are taken when doing the risk profiling of an organization? Answer. Steps to do the risk profiling. Identify the health and safety threats faced by the organization from the hazardous activities. Identify the health and safety impacts and the business impacts that might result from these threats, risks. Identify how well each threat, risk, is currently controlled, what the existing controls available. Identify the likelihood of each threat occurring, based on the existing controls. It may be imminent or after log time. Identify the priority of each threat. This involves ordering them in terms of importance, that need to take care on priority. Advise the control measures to safeguard the business at large. Question 3. Identify, outline what are the objectives doing the risk assessment? Or what we want to achieve from the process of risk assessment. Answer. The objectives of risk assessment are to prevent the fatalities and injuries. To prevent the property damages. To meet the legal requirement, thus avoiding prosecutions. To reduce the financial losses by controlling the accidents. Question 4. It is required that risk assessment shall be suitable and sufficient. Outline what is the suitable and sufficient risk assessment? Answer. A suitable and sufficient risk assessment should. It must have the designation name of the person who do the risk assessment. It shall include the activity and location where the activity will be performed. Must have identified hazard comprehensively. It must show the risk evaluation and suitable controls to reduce the risks. It must identify all those persons who could be at risk. It must be appropriate to size and nature of the work. There must be validity and review date mentioned. Signed by the persons involved in conducting the risk assessment. Question 5. Identify 5 steps while conducting the risk assessment? Answer. Risk assessment can be described as a 5-step process. Identify the hazards. Identify the people who might be harmed and how. Evaluate the risk and decide on precautions. Record the significant findings and implement them. Review and update as necessary. Question 6. Outline what is the hazard identification method during the process of risk assessment? Answer. During the hazard identification we are selecting a main job, and we break down the job into smaller steps of the job, task, and identify the hazards posed by each task, step of the job. To reach to the clear pictures of hazards and risk we shall select the main job, break down the job into small steps, identify the hazards and risks posed by each step of the job. Question 7. Outline the options of general hierarchy of control considered in risk assessment? Answer. Elimination. If a hazard can be eliminated, then the risk created by that hazard disappears. This might be done by completely avoiding an activity that gives rise to risk. Substitution. Sometimes, hazard elimination cannot be achieved, but it is possible to substitute one hazard with another that creates less risk. Engineering controls. Engineering controls involve the use of an engineering solution to prevent exposure to the hazard, isolation, barricades, separation. Administrative controls. Administrative controls are those that rely on procedures and behavior, such as safe system of work, work breaks. PPE. Personal protective equipment. Question 8. A. If we have decided to use the PPE, a risk control, identity, what are factors that shall be considered when deciding to use the PPE? B. What are features that make the PPE suitable? Answer. The factors to be considered when using the PPE as risk controls. The PPE selected for use must be suitable for the job and condition of work. Ensure that when two or more items of PPE must be worn together, they are compatible. Provide suitable storage accommodation for PPE. Provide information, instruction and training to workers on the PPE they are expected to wear. Enforce the use of PPE. Replace or repair damaged or lost items. Suitable PPE. It is appropriate for the risks and the conditions. It is ergonomic, that is user-friendly. It fits properly. It does not increase overall risk. It complies with any relevant standards. Question 9. Explain what is the collective, holistic approach of implementing HOC? Or what is the difference in collective and personal approach of HOC? Answer. Personal approach means that we are trying to protect the workers individually and focus on one by one person. Collective protective controls mean that instead of individual workers, we are taking some actions as whole to control the risks. The concept of collective approach of HOC is working in two ways. Safe place. Under this concept we are creating a safe place for workers, and everyone working in the subject workplace will be feeling safe. It is achieved by eliminating hazards, engineering controls, isolation of energy, safe design of workplace or equipment, safe process and similar others. Safe person. In this concept we are focusing to improve the safety behavior and try to change the attitude and perception of the workers so that they will become safe persons by themselves. Training, competency, awareness and so are important to create safe person. Question 10. Outline what is the acceptable, residual and tolerable risks. Answer. Acceptable risk is the risk that is safe to work with. For this risk no further risk controls needed, and task can be completed. Residual risk. This is the risk remained after we have taken the risk controls to bring the risk as low as reasonably practical. Tolerable risk is where we can work for some time and at the same time, we must find the solutions to reduce the risk to the acceptable. Question 11. What are the reasons, conditions that may make us to review the risk assessment? Answer. These conditions are that will trigger the review process of a risk assessment. Change of method of working or process. Change of material or substance used in the activity. Change of equipment or tools. Change of working place or location. Change of workers. Change of legal requirement or standard related to the activity. The risk assessment will be also reviewed if any one of the following happens. Any accident or incident, near miss. Anybody or worker becomes sick by the activity. Question 12. What are the hazards the expectant mother may be exposed to, and how we can control the risks? Answer. Hazards to young and expectant mothers. Certain hazardous chemicals. Biological agents. Manual handling, especially later in pregnancy. Extremes of temperature. Whole body vibration. Ionizing radiation. Night shift work. Stress. Violence. Controls. Change the type of work or the way that it is done. Change the hours of work. Suspend the woman from the workplace. Question 13. Temporary projects may be part of the existing workplace, Identify the hazards that might come across to the temporary workers in any workplace. Answer. Working at height. Slipping and tripping on the working place. Sharp object, and biohazards. Exposure to chemicals and hazardous substance. Bad weather, hot, dust, extreme cold. Vehicle movement. Working equipment. Manual handling and lifting of heavy objects. High noise and vibration. Using lifting and accessories. Hot work and fire hazards. During demolition, structure may collapse. Question 14. Outline the general controls to mitigate the risk from temporary works in workplace. Answer. Risk assessment. A formal risk assessment is recommended before starting the work. Effective and appropriate communication channel is key to understand and mitigate the risks. The competent persons shall be assigned to carry out the activities so that they could work with safety. Isolation and segregation of temporary work site from the main work site is highly important. Emergency response procedures shall be ready to curb any unforeseen emergency. Suitable and separate welfare facilities shall be provided for the temporary workers. Supervision of the work area, and review and updating of the risk controls shall be regularly done to keep it relevant.